5 years ago, a silver-haired mother stood in the cold rain, clutching a crumpled $50 bill, the only thing her own son had given her before slamming the door in her face. The sound of his mocking laughter still echoed from the house she'd once called home. Today, that same son stands on her doorstep, desperation etched across his face. But what he finds isn't the broken woman he discarded. He finds someone who rose from the ashes of betrayal, someone who learned that the sweetest revenge is a life well lived without those who threw you away. My name is Evelyn Harper, and I was 68 years old when my own son threw me out like yesterday's garbage. The rain was coming down hard that October night, the kind that soaks through your clothes in seconds and chills you to the bone. I stood on the front porch of the house I'd lived in for 37 years, watching Daniel, my Daniel, the boy I'd nursed through chickenpox and taught to ride a bike, lock the door with a finality that made my chest tighten. "Here," he said, shoving a $50 bill into my hand. His eyes, the same hazel as his father's, held no warmth. "This should be enough to get you somewhere. Just somewhere that isn't here." Behind him, Melissa, his wife, smirked from the hallway. She'd been working on this for years. I realized, poisoning him against me drop by drop, like arsenic in tea. Their son, my grandson Ethan, peeked around the corner, 9 years old and already trained to call me the witch instead of grandma. "Daniel, please," I heard myself say, though pride should have kept me silent. "This is my home. Your father and I—" "Dad's dead," he cut me off. "Has been for 2 years. And this house, it's in my name now, remember? You signed it over when you couldn't handle the bills." I had signed it over. Trusting my son had seemed like the natural thing to do when grief had clouded my judgment and the mortgage payments overwhelmed my teacher's pension. What a fool I'd been. "You're confused again." "Mom," Melissa chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. "Maybe it's time for a nursing home. Though," she glanced at the 50 in my hand, "I doubt that'll cover it." Their laughter followed me as I walked down the driveway. My hastily packed bag, a pathetic collection of clothes and photographs, growing heavier with each step. The rain plastered my gray hair to my skull, and I must have looked like the witch they claimed I was. A neighbor's curtain twitched, but no one came out. No one ever does when family turns ugly. I made it 3 blocks before my legs gave out. There was a bus shelter there, its bench hard and unforgiving. I sat down and finally looked at what I'd grabbed in those frantic minutes Daniel had given me to pack. 3 blouses, 2 pairs of slacks, my blood pressure medication, and a handful of photos, my wedding picture, Daniel as a baby, my husband Robert in his Sunday best. The $50 bill was already damp from the rain. I smoothed it out, thinking about how Daniel used to save his allowance in a little wooden box, proud of every dollar earned from mowing lawns. That boy was gone, replaced by someone I didn't recognize. A bus pulled up, its doors hissing open. The driver, a middle-aged black woman with kind eyes, looked at me expectantly. "Where to? Honey? Where to?" Indeed, I had no answer. No family left. Robert's relatives had drifted away after his death, and my own sister lived in a nursing home in Florida. Her mind lost to dementia. The friends I'd thought I had were really Robert's friends, and they disappeared with him. "Just downtown," I said, climbing aboard. "The YMCA," she nodded, and I found a seat near the back. Through the fogged window, I watched my neighborhood disappear. 37 years of memories. Daniel's first steps in the living room, Robert building that treehouse in the backyard, Sunday dinners with the smell of pot roast filling the air. The YMCA couldn't take me. Single women's shelter was full. They directed me to St. Mary's Church, where at least I could be dry for the night. I lay on a cot between 2 other women, one muttering in her sleep, the other coughing wetly. The church basement smelled of industrial disinfectant and despair. This was my life now. 68 years old, retired teacher, widow, and now homeless. All because I'd trusted the child I'd raised, believed that blood meant something. As sleep finally claimed me. I thought I heard Robert's voice, warm and reassuring the way it had been during our 40 years together. "Get up tomorrow, Evie. Just get up and keep going." I would, not because I had hope, but because spite can be just as powerful as love. Daniel thought $50 could erase a mother. He was about to learn how wrong he was, though I didn't know it yet. That night, I was just a broken woman on a church cot, clutching a damp $50 bill and wondering how love could turn to cruelty so completely. The months that followed were the darkest of my life. Saint. Mary's could only shelter me for 3 nights before I had to move on. Those were the rules. I drifted between churches, shelters, and park benches, learning the brutal arithmetic of homelessness, where to find a meal, which public restrooms stayed open, how to make $50 last when it was all you had in the world. Pride is the first thing you lose on the streets. I'd been Mrs. Harper, respected 3rd-grade teacher at Riverside Elementary for 32 years. Now I was just another gray-haired woman pushing a shopping cart, invisible to the world that rushed past. Former colleagues walked by without recognition, though perhaps they simply chose not to see. By December, I'd found a women's shelter that let me stay if I helped with cleaning. The Washington Street Women's Haven became my home. If you could call a bunk bed in a room with 12 other women home. I scrubbed floors and cleaned bathrooms, my teacher's hands growing rough with bleach and cheap soap. That's where I met Rosa, who ran Bright Hands Cleaning Services. She was hiring, she said, watching me work. "You're thorough," she observed, "methodical. I could use someone like you." The pay was minimum wage, but it was work, real work. I started the next Monday, reporting at 5:30 a.m. to a small office that smelled of lemon disinfectant and coffee. Rosa paired me with Maria, a woman about my age who'd been cleaning offices for 20 years. "Teacher, right?" Maria asked on our first day together. "I can always tell it's the way you arrange things." We cleaned office buildings in the pre-dawn darkness, ghost women making the world ready for people who would never see us. Law firms, medical practices, tech startups. I emptied their trash, vacuumed their carpets, and wiped down their desks. In one office, I found a framed photo of a grandmother with her grandchildren and had to sit down until the shaking stopped. With steady work came a tiny efficiency apartment, one room with a hot plate and a bathroom so small you could touch both walls at once. $400 a month in the rough part of town, but it was mine. I signed the lease with hands that trembled, then sat on the floor and cried for an hour. Slowly, I began rebuilding. Goodwill provided furniture, a narrow bed, a small table, 2 chairs. The dollar store yielded dishes, towels, cleaning supplies. I saved every penny I could, eating rice and beans, walking instead of taking the bus, mending my clothes until the patches had patches. But it was the lavender candle that marked my real return to personhood. I found it at a garage sale, 50 cents for a memory. Robert had loved lavender, kept it growing in our garden. "Smells like peace," he used to say. That night, I lit the candle and spoke to him in the darkness. "I'm surviving. Bobby, not living yet, but surviving." The cleaning work was hard on my body. My knees protested the constant kneeling. My back ached from pushing heavy vacuums. But there was something meditative about making things clean, bringing order to chaos. I understood why monks cleaned as prayer. Maria became my friend, the first real friend I'd had since becoming homeless. She'd lost everything in a divorce years ago, rebuilt her life one toilet scrubbed at a time. "The thing about hitting bottom," she told me over gas station coffee one morning, "is you find out what you're really made of." What was I made of? Tougher stuff than I'd known. Every morning at 4:30 a.m., I rose. Every night, I lit my lavender candle and told Robert about my day. Simple rituals that kept me tethered to humanity when the world seemed determined to erase me. I started writing in a composition book I'd found, not a diary exactly, but observations. The way dawn looked through dirty office windows, the stories told by what people left on their desks, the dignity in Maria's careful work. Teaching had trained me to notice details, and now those details kept me sane. 1 year became 2. I moved to a better apartment, one with an actual kitchen. I could afford a phone now, though I had no one to call. Sometimes I'd dial Daniel's number just to hear his voicemail, then hang up without leaving a message. Melissa had trained him well. I was deleted from his life as efficiently as junk mail. The other cleaning women began calling me teacher. I helped their kids with homework sometimes, remembering the joy of watching understanding dawn in a child's eyes. Rosa promoted me to shift supervisor, a 50-cent raise that felt like winning the lottery. But late at night, in the small circle of lavender-scented light, I was still just a mother without her child, a grandmother denied her grandson. The ache never left, just scarred over, enough to bear. "I'm going to survive this, Bobby," I whispered to the darkness. "And someday, somehow, I'm going to show them what they threw away." I didn't know how yet. But spite and lavender smoke carried me through those dark years, one clean floor at a time. It was a Thursday night in March, unseasonably cold with sleet tapping against the windows. I'd worked a double shift. One of the regular girls was sick, and my bones felt like they'd been ground to powder. The walk home from the bus stop seemed endless, each step a negotiation with exhaustion. That's when I heard it, a sound so faint I almost missed it over the sleet, a whimper like a wounded animal. I stopped, listening. There it was again, coming from the dumpster behind the Lucky Dragon restaurant. Common sense said, keep walking. This neighborhood swallowed the careless whole. But something in that sound pulled at the teacher in me, the mother I'd been erased from being. I approached carefully, using my phone's flashlight to peer behind the reeking container. At first, I saw only garbage bags and cardboard, then a tiny movement, a small hand, barely visible beneath wet newspaper. My heart stopped. I pushed aside the debris and found her, a little girl, maybe 3 years old, wearing only a thin nightgown. Her lips were blue, eyes unfocused with cold. "Oh, sweet Jesus," I breathed, stripping off my coat to wrap her. She was so light, like holding a bird. I could feel her ribs through the fabric, count each vertebra in her spine. I ran then, my arthritis forgotten, clutching her against my chest. The emergency room at St. Joseph's was 4 blocks away. By the time I burst through the doors, we were both soaked, but I could feel her heart beating against mine, fast and fluttery, but beating. "Please," I called out. "I found her. She needs help." The nurses moved like lightning, taking her from my arms. I tried to follow, but a security guard stopped me. Questions came in waves. "Where did you find her? Did you see anyone? What's your relationship to the child?" "No relationship," I said, teeth chattering. I heard her crying." Hours passed. Police arrived, took my statement. A detective with kind eyes and coffee breath asked the same questions different ways. All I could think about was that tiny hand, those blue lips. When had she last eaten? Who could throw away a child like garbage? Finally, a doctor emerged. "She's stable," she said. "Hypothermic, malnourished, but she'll recover. You saved her life. Can I see her?" The doctor hesitated, then nodded. Briefly. She looked even smaller in the hospital bed, dwarfed by white sheets and monitoring equipment. They'd put color back in her cheeks, but she seemed fragile as spun glass. I sat beside her, remembering nights I'd spent watching Daniel sleep, terrified he'd stop breathing. "You're safe now, little one," I whispered. Her eyes fluttered open, brown and enormous, like a fawn's. She studied me with that serious way small children have, then reached out one hand. I gave her my finger to hold, and she gripped it with surprising strength. "Hungry," she whispered. "Soon. Sweetheart, the nurses will bring you something soon." We stayed like that until a social worker arrived. Mrs. Patterson, her badge said, though she insisted I call her Janet. She was younger than Daniel, with an earnest face and constantly moving hands. "The police are investigating," she said. "No missing child reports match her description. No one's claimed her." "What happens now?" "Foster care. Once she's medically cleared, unless—" She paused, studying me. "I read your statement. You're a retired teacher?" "Yes." "Have you ever considered foster care?" The question hung between us like smoke. Me? I was 70 years old, living on minimum wage, rebuilding from nothing. But I thought of that small hand gripping mine, of the child thrown away like I'd been thrown away. "I have nothing," I said honestly. A one-bedroom apartment, a cleaning job. That's more than she has, Janet said softly. The next morning, the Tribune ran the story. Homeless woman saves abandoned child. The reporter had gotten it wrong. I wasn't homeless anymore, but the headline stuck. By noon, my phone was ringing. Local news wanted interviews. Someone started a GoFundMe. Rosa gave me a week off with pay. You saved a baby. Evelyn, take the time. The little girl, the hospital called her Jane Doe, grew stronger daily. I visited every day, reading her stories, teaching her finger games. She rarely spoke, but watched everything with those enormous eyes. On the 4th day, she smiled when she saw me. On the 5th, she called me Lady. What's your name, sweetheart? I asked her for the 100th time. She looked at me solemnly, then pointed at the ceiling. Grace, she said clearly. My name, Grace. Janet fast-tracked the foster application. My background check was spotless. 32 years of teaching counted for something. The home visit revealed poverty but cleanliness, order, safety. When she approved me as an emergency placement, I cried. The GoFundMe had raised $12,000 in a week. For the teacher who saves children, people wrote, for Grace and her guardian angel. Strangers sent clothes, toys, furniture. My co-workers at Bright Hands pooled money for a crib. The day I brought Grace home, Maria helped me carry in donations. My small apartment transformed. A corner became a nursery. Toys brightened the worn carpet. Child safety locks appeared on cabinets. You know this is crazy, Maria said, but she was smiling. 70 years old, starting over with a baby. 3. Grace piped up, holding up 3 fingers. I 3. That night, I lit my lavender candle with Grace on my lap. She'd had a bath, eaten 2 bowls of soup, and now wore pink pajamas with rabbits on them. Her hair, clean and braided, smelled like baby shampoo. This is how we end our day, I told her. We light a candle for people we love. Who you love, she asked. My husband Robert, my son Daniel, and now you. She considered this seriously. I love Lady, she decided, as she slept in her new crib. I sat by the window thinking about circles and chances. I'd been thrown away, discarded like trash. Now I'd found another throwaway child, and together we'd make something new from the pieces. The newspaper clipping was already framed on my wall. Local teacher saves abandoned child. But I knew the truth. We'd saved each other. The GoFundMe money changed everything. Not the amount, though $12,000 was more than I'd saved in 2 years of cleaning, but what it represented. People cared. Strangers who'd never met me decided we deserved a chance at something better. With Janet's help, I found a 2-bedroom house for rent in Willow Creek, a quiet neighborhood with sidewalks and trees that actually bloomed in spring, the day we moved in. Grace ran through the empty rooms laughing, her voice echoing off bare walls like music. I hadn't heard such pure joy since Daniel was small. Our house, Lady, she shouted, spinning in circles until she fell dizzy on the carpet. Our very own house. I quit the night shift at Bright Hands but kept the morning one. Rosa understood I needed the flexibility now. The local newspaper offered me a column after the rescue story went viral. Second Chances, a weekly piece about starting over later in life. $50 per article wasn't much, but it was $50 I earned, sitting at my kitchen table while Grace colored beside me. The adoption process moved slowly. Grace had nightmares at first, waking screaming about the dark place and hungry tummy. I'd hold her until she calmed, singing the same lullabies I'd sung to Daniel. By summer, she was sleeping through the night, though she still insisted on a nightlight shaped like a butterfly. I enrolled her in Little Learners preschool. That first day, she clung to my leg like a barnacle. You come back? She asked, eyes wide with fear. Always. I promised. I will always come back for you. Watching her finally let go and join the other children felt like watching a bird learn to fly. When I picked her up 3 hours later, she was covered in finger paint and joy. I made friends. Grandma Lady, she'd started calling me that, combining what she knew with what she sensed I needed to hear. The lavender garden came next. Robert had loved lavender, and I needed something growing, something alive. Grace helped me plant, her small hands patting soil around each plant with careful concentration. By fall, our front yard bloomed purple, and I taught her to make sachets for her drawers. "Smells like happy," she declared, echoing Robert without knowing it. My column gained readership. I wrote about finding dignity in minimum wage work, about the invisible women who cleaned the world, about choosing hope when despair seemed easier. Letters came from other throwaway people: widows, divorcees, empty nesters, the laid off and left behind. We were legion, it seemed. But we were surviving. The editor, Mr. Brooks, called me in for a meeting. "You've struck a nerve," he said. "Women over 50 feel invisible in this culture, but you see them. We'd like to syndicate your column." Syndication meant $300 per article, health insurance, a small but steady income. I sat in his office trying not to cry while Grace played with paper clips at my feet. "Yes," I managed. "Thank you." That night, I lit 2 candles, one for Robert, one for celebration. Grace had her own ritual now, whispering secrets to the flame like prayers. I didn't ask what she told the candle. Some things were too precious to share. By winter, we'd settled into routine. Mornings at Bright Hands, afternoons writing while Grace was at school, evenings full of homework and stories and bubbles in the bath. Weekends we explored, the library, the park, the farmer's market where vendors knew us by name. "You've bloomed," Maria told me one morning, "like those flowers of yours." She was right. At 72, I was more myself than I'd been in years. Not the grieving widow, not the discarded mother, but Evelyn Harper, columnist, guardian, gardener of lavender and little girls. The formal adoption was finalized just before Christmas. The judge, a woman with steel gray hair and knowing eyes, made it official. Grace Harper, my legal daughter. In the courthouse bathroom afterward, I sobbed. Great gulping sobs of grief and gratitude mixed together. 5 years after losing my son, I was a mother again. That Christmas was modest but perfect. Grace had never had a real Christmas before, and watching her discover traditions was like seeing color return to a black and white world. We strung popcorn, baked cookies, sang carols off-key. On Christmas morning, she opened her presents with reverent wonder, saving every scrap of wrapping paper. "Why you crying, Grandma Lady?" she asked, finding me teary-eyed by the tree. "Happy tears," I told her, "the very best kind." I thought of Daniel then, wondered if he was teaching Ethan about Christmas traditions. The anger had calcified into something harder but less painful. A stone in my chest I'd learned to carry. I'd stopped calling his number, stopped hoping. Grace needed all of me, not the parts still bleeding over what I'd lost. A package arrived on December 27th. No return address. Inside was a wooden memory box, exactly like the one Daniel had saved his allowance in as a child. A note in unfamiliar handwriting said only, "Every ending is also a beginning." I never learned who sent it, but I filled it with new memories. Grace's adoption papers, pressed lavender from our garden, photographs of our rebuilt life. The past lived in its own box now, separate from our flowering future. "Tell me again about the day you found me," Grace would ask at bedtime, the story already becoming family legend. It was the coldest night. I'd begin, and her eyes would grow wide with delicious fear, knowing the happy ending, needing to hear it anyway. We were healing, both of us, in our house full of lavender and laughter. 2 throwaways who'd found each other in the dark, building something beautiful from the pieces left behind. The doorbell rang at 7:15 p.m. on a Tuesday. Grace and I were making homemade pizza, flour dusting every surface. Her small hands learning to knead dough. The sound was so unexpected, we rarely had visitors, that we both froze. "I'll get it," I said, wiping my hands on my apron. "You keep working that dough, sweet pea." Through the peephole, I saw him, 5 years older, thinner, his hair showing gray at the temples. Daniel stood on my porch holding the hand of a teenage boy who must be Ethan. My grandson had grown tall. All knees and elbows at that awkward age, they both looked exhausted, worn down by something more than time. My hand trembled on the deadbolt behind me. Grace sang a made-up song about pizza toppings. I could pretend we weren't home. Let them ring until they gave up. But Ethan's face, God, he looked so much like Robert at that age. Lost. I opened the door but didn't invite them in. Hello? Daniel. He flinched at my formal tone. Once, I would have called him sweetheart, honey, my boy. Now he was just Daniel, a stranger who shared my DNA. Mom? The words seemed to catch in his throat. We need to talk. Do we? I kept my voice steady, though my heart hammered against my ribs. I believe you said everything necessary 5 years ago. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, glancing between us, up close. I could see the shadows under his eyes, the way his clothes hung loose. Whatever had brought them here, it had taken its toll. Please, Daniel said, and I heard something I'd never heard from him before. Desperation. Just 5 minutes. Grandma lady. Grace appeared beside me. Flour in her dark hair, pizza sauce on her cheek. Who's at the door? Daniel's face went through several expressions, shock, confusion, something that might have been pain. He stared at Grace, then at me, working out the obvious conclusion. You replaced me, he said quietly, with another kid. The words were so absurd I almost laughed. Replaced him? As if children were appliances you could swap out when they broke. This is my daughter, Grace, I said, pulling her protectively against my side. Grace, these are people I used to know. Hi, Grace said cheerfully, waving a dough-covered hand. We're making pizza. Want some? No, I said quickly. They were just leaving. Mom, please. Daniel's voice cracked. We have nowhere else to go. Melissa left, took everything. The house is gone, foreclosure. My job. I lost my job 8 months ago. We've been living in my car for 2 weeks. I looked at Ethan again. Really looked. The hollow cheeks, the dirty fingernails, the way he hunched into himself. My grandson was homeless. The irony was sharp enough to cut. Where's your $50? The words came out harder than I intended. Surely that's enough to get you somewhere. Somewhere that isn't here. Daniel flinched as I threw his own words back at him. Good. Let him taste that particular poison. I know I don't deserve— No, I interrupted. You don't. You threw me out like garbage, called me a burden, taught your son to call me a witch, and now, when you need help, you come here, to the woman you decided was worth exactly $50? Dad. Ethan spoke for the first time, his voice deep but uncertain. Maybe we should go. Something in the boy's voice, shame, resignation, a tiredness too old for 14, made me pause. This wasn't his fault. Children learned what they were taught, and Daniel had taught him I was worthless. But here he stood, homeless and afraid, paying for his father's choices. Are you hungry? I asked Ethan directly, ignoring Daniel. He glanced at his father, then nodded slightly. Yes, ma'am. Grandma Lady makes the best pizza, Grace announced, with extra cheese and pepperonis and sometimes pineapple, but only if you like pineapple because not everyone likes pineapple. And, Grace, I said gently, why don't you go set 2 more places at the table, just for dinner? I added, looking at Daniel. Nothing more. They followed us inside, Daniel moving like he was entering a foreign country. He took in the small but tidy living room, the wall of framed columns, Grace's artwork covering the refrigerator. This wasn't the broken woman he'd expected to find. Wash your hands, I told them, pointing to the bathroom. Both of you. Then you can help finish dinner. While they cleaned up, I tried to calm my racing thoughts. 5 years of imagining this moment, and now I didn't know what to feel. Anger, certainly, but also a treacherous flutter of hope that maybe, finally, my son had come home. They seem sad, Grace observed, stretching pizza dough with concentration. The boy looks like you sometimes. Are they your family? Leave it to a 6-year-old to cut straight to the heart. It's complicated. Sweet pea. Oh, she considered this. Like when Tommy at school said his daddy lives in 2 houses now? Something like that. Daniel and Ethan returned, looking marginally cleaner. The 4 of us worked in awkward silence, assembling pizzas. Ethan kept sneaking glances at the normal domesticity, the cheerful kitchen, the lavender plant on the windowsill. Grace chattering about her day at school. We ate quietly, The only sounds Grace's happy munching and the tick of the clock. Daniel cleared his throat several times, starting and abandoning sentences. Finally, as Grace helped me clear the plates, he found his voice. "You've done well for yourself. No thanks to you. I deserve that. You deserve worse." I kept my voice low, mindful of the children. "But your son doesn't, so we'll talk after Grace goes to bed." After Grace went to bed, insisting on hugging both sad boys goodnight, we sat at the kitchen table like opposing armies. Ethan hunched beside his father, picking at a splinter in the wood, Daniel's hands wrapped around a mug of coffee he wasn't drinking. "So," I said, "talk." Daniel launched into his story. Bad investments, Melissa's spending, the company downsizing, a familiar litany of blame aimed at everyone but himself. I let him ramble, watching Ethan's face grow more miserable with each excuse. "Stop," I finally said. "Just stop. You're doing it again, making yourself the victim. Poor Daniel, betrayed by everyone. Do you even hear yourself? What do you want me to say?" He slammed the mug down, coffee sloshing. "That I screwed up? Fine. I screwed up. Happy? Are you seriously asking if your homelessness makes me happy?" I kept my voice level, though rage simmered beneath. "You think I celebrated when my grandson started sleeping in cars?" Ethan flinched. I softened my tone for him. "This isn't your fault. Ethan, none of this." "He says it is." The boy mumbled. "Says if I hadn't been so expensive. Don't..." The word came out sharp enough to cut. "Don't you dare blame this child for your failures." Daniel had the grace to look ashamed. "I didn't mean..." "You never mean it. You didn't mean to call me a burden. Didn't mean to teach him I was a witch. Didn't mean any of the cruelty that rolled so easily off your tongue. But you did it anyway." I stood, needing distance from his familiar face wearing unfamiliar desperation. The lavender candle sat unlit on the counter. I wouldn't light it while he was here. Some rituals were too sacred to share with those who'd proven unworthy. "You have some nerve," I continued, "showing up here like nothing happened, like you didn't steal my home, my dignity, my family. $50. Daniel, you valued your mother at $50. I was wrong. You were cruel. There's a difference. Wrong is a mistake. Cruel is a choice." Ethan spoke up, voice small. "He kept your picture. In the car, hidden under the visor." Daniel shot him a betrayed look, but the boy continued. "Sometimes I'd catch him looking at it, especially after Mom left. This information sat between us like an uninvited guest. I didn't know what to do with it, so I ignored it. Where exactly have you been living?" "The car, mostly. Sometimes the shelter on Madison, but they're usually full." Daniel wouldn't meet my eyes. "I've been looking for work, but without an address." I knew that trap intimately. No address meant no job. No job meant no address. A vicious circle that swallowed the desperate whole. The boy should be in school. "I go," Ethan said defensively. "I haven't missed a day. Dad drops me off early so I can shower in the gym." My God. My grandson was showering at school, probably eating free breakfast and lunch, carrying his life in a backpack. The same age Daniel had been when he'd started saving his allowance in that little wooden box, back when he still believed in the goodness of things. "Mom," Daniel said. And for the first time since he'd arrived, he sounded like my son instead of a stranger. "I know I have no right to ask, but Ethan, he doesn't deserve this. Would you consider just him, not me? I'll figure something out, but he needs..." "You want me to take your son, the grandson you taught to despise me?" Ethan's head snapped up. "I don't despise you. I didn't know you. Dad and Mom said things, but..." He trailed off and then gathered courage. "You saved that little girl. I read about it. That was brave. That was human decency," I corrected, "the bare minimum of what people owe each other." "More than we showed you," Daniel said quietly. Silence settled over us like dust. I thought about Grace upstairs, safe in her bed with her butterfly nightlight. Thought about Ethan sleeping in a car, showering at school, pretending everything was normal. Thought about the woman I'd been 5 years ago, standing in the rain with nowhere to go. "I need to think," I said finally. It's late. You can sleep on the couch tonight, both of you. There are blankets in the hall closet. We'll talk more in the morning. Mom, that's all I'm offering right now. Take it or leave it. They took it. As I headed upstairs, I heard Ethan whisper, "She seems nice." Dad, not like a witch at all. "She was always nice," Daniel replied, so low I almost missed it. I was the monster. In my room, I sat on the bed and shook, not with cold this time, but with the sheer impossibility of it all. The son who'd discarded me needed saving. The grandson I'd been denied was sleeping on my couch, and somewhere in the mess of pain and principle, I had to find the right path. I thought about Robert, what he would say. Family is family. Evie. Probably. But Robert had never been thrown away by his own child. He died believing in the goodness of our son. From down the hall came Grace's sleep-mumbled singing. Something about pizza and new friends. My second-chance daughter. My unexpected blessing. She'd shown me I could still be a mother. Still had love to give, but could I give it to the one who'd broken me first? The lavender sachet under my pillow released its scent as I lay down. Tomorrow would bring impossible decisions. Tonight, I just needed to breathe and remember who I'd become. Not the discarded woman with $50, but Evelyn Harper, columnist, mother, survivor, strong enough, perhaps, to face whatever morning would demand. Morning came too soon. I found Daniel on the front porch, staring at our lavender garden as dawn broke. He looked older in the gentle light, worn down by more than circumstance. "Couldn't sleep?" I asked, handing him coffee. "Haven't slept well in months." He accepted the mug gratefully. "I used to hate the smell of lavender. Reminded me of Dad. Now." He gestured at the purple blooms. "You've recreated his garden. Some things deserve to be remembered." We stood in awkward silence until he spoke again. "I found something yesterday, when we were packing what was left." He pulled out a small device from his pocket, Robert's old hearing aid. "I kept it. Don't know why." My breath caught. "Your father's. There's something on it. A recording. I listened to it last night." His hands trembled. "Mom, I need you to hear this." Before I could respond, he pressed play. Robert's voice, thin and distorted, but unmistakably his, filled the morning air. Then Daniel's voice, younger, harsh. "Just die already? You're useless. Mom wastes her whole life taking care of you. We'd all be better off if you'd just let go." I heard Robert's labored breathing. Then, "Your mother loves you. Despite." "Despite what? Despite me being honest, you're pathetic. Lying there, making her change your diapers like a baby. I told Melissa we're not ending up like you two. When we're old, we'll have dignity. We'll have money, not this." The recording cut off. Daniel's face was wet with tears I'd never seen him shed, not even at Robert's funeral. "He died 2 days later," Daniel whispered. I thought I was being strong, honest. Melissa always said brutal honesty was better than comfortable lies. "You killed his spirit before his body gave up." My voice came out steadier than I felt. "He died thinking his son despised him. I know." The words broke on a sob. "I know what I did. To him, to you. And now I'm the one who's pathetic, begging the mother I threw away to save me." From inside came the sound of Grace and Ethan talking. She was showing him her rock collection, chattering about which ones were magic, the easy acceptance of children, untainted by adult cruelties. "Why show me this now?" I asked. "Because you deserve the truth, all of it, and because—" He struggled for words. "Because I need you to know that when I beg you to take Ethan, it's not manipulation. I'm poison, Mom. I poisoned Dad's last days, poisoned you, poisoned my marriage. But Ethan, he could still be good. Like you, like Grace. Don't you dare." The fury came suddenly, white hot. "Don't you dare stand there and play martyr. You want me to take your son so you can what? Drift away feeling noble? That's just another form of abandonment. What else can I do?" He was shouting now. "I have nothing. I am nothing. At least if he's with you, he'll wonder why his father threw him away, just like I wondered why my son threw me away." I stepped closer, forcing him to meet my eyes. The pain doesn't end, Daniel. It just passes to the next generation. The front door opened. Grace bounded out, Ethan trailing behind. She dressed herself in mismatched clothes, purple shirt, orange pants, rain boots despite the clear sky. "Morning, Grandma Lady, morning, sad man, we're hungry. Can we have pancakes?" "Grace, sweetheart, go get the eggs from the fridge. Ethan can help you." As they disappeared inside, Daniel crumpled. "I don't know how to fix this. Start by stopping the cycle. Stay, work, rebuild. Show your son that falling down doesn't mean staying down. You'd let us stay?" I thought about the recording. Robert's final days poisoned by cruelty. Thought about Grace. Thrown away but found. Thought about second chances and third chances and how many chances love could survive. "I have conditions," I said. "Non-negotiable." He nodded eagerly. Too eagerly. He didn't understand yet what I would ask. "First, you get a job. Any job. I'll help with clothes, resumes, whatever you need, but you work. Second, you contribute. Cleaning, cooking, maintenance. This is not a free ride. Third, therapy. Both of you. Individual and family. Fourth, you tell Ethan the truth. All of it. What you did. Why we weren't in his life. No more lies. No more painting me as the witch." "Mom?" "I'm not finished. Fifth, Grace comes first. Always. She's my daughter. And if your presence hurts her in any way, you're gone. Sixth, respect. You speak to me with respect. About me with respect. The days of cruel honesty are over. And seventh." I paused, gathering strength. "You listen to that recording every week. Remember what cruelty costs. Remember who you chose to be, so you can choose differently." His face had gone pale. That's torture." "No. Torture is standing in the rain with $50 and nowhere to go. This is accountability." From inside came the sound of eggs hitting the floor and Grace's oopsie, followed by Ethan's patient, "It's okay, we'll clean it up." "Do you accept my conditions?" Daniel looked through the doorway at his son, kneeling on my kitchen floor, carefully helping a little girl clean up broken eggs. Something shifted in his face, a recognition of what he'd almost lost, what he could still save. "I accept. Then you can stay. 2 months to get on your feet. Find a place. This isn't forgiveness. Daniel, this is a chance to earn it." We went inside to make pancakes. Grace appointed herself chief mixer, while Ethan cracked eggs with practiced care. Daniel stood uncertainly by the door until I handed him a spatula. "Make yourself useful," I said. "That's lesson 1. As we worked together in my small kitchen, I felt Robert's presence like a blessing. Not forgiveness yet, that would take time, but the possibility of it. The recording still echoed in my mind, brutal truths that couldn't be unheard. But alongside it, Grace's laughter, Ethan's shy smile, the chance to rebuild what cruelty had broken. The pancakes were perfect golden circles. We ate them with lavender honey from our own garden, sweet and floral and complicated, like families, like forgiveness, like the careful work of healing what once seemed irreparably broken. 2 months passed. Daniel found work at a warehouse, hard, honest labor that humbled him in necessary ways. Ethan thrived in school, no longer showering in the gym but in his own bathroom each morning. They'd found a small apartment 6 blocks away, close enough for Sunday dinners but far enough for healthy boundaries. The therapy was working, slowly, painfully, like pulling glass from old wounds, but working. Tonight was different. Tonight. Daniel asked to light the lavender candle with us. "It's sacred to us," I warned. "Grace and we have our rituals." "I know," he said quietly. "I'd like to honor Dad, properly this time." Grace, now 6.5 and full of opinions, studied him seriously. "You have to mean it," she informed him. "The candle knows if you're fibbing." "I mean it," Daniel promised. We gathered around the kitchen table, 4 souls who'd found each other through loss and chance. I lit the candle, lavender smoke curling toward the ceiling like prayers. "I speak to Robert here," I said. "Tell him about my day, my hopes." Grace tells her secrets. "I tell him about school," Grace added, "and my loose tooth. See? She wiggled a front tooth proudly. Ethan shifted nervously. Could I talk to Grandpa too? Even though I was mean before? Grandpa forgives, Grace said with the certainty of a child who'd never known conditional love. That's what grandpas do. Daniel's breath hitched. When he spoke, his voice was raw. Dad, I'm sorry for the words, for the cruelty, for not seeing who you really were until it was too late. I'm trying to be better. Mom's teaching me. You're Evie. She's stronger than either of us knew. The candle flame danced, casting shadows and light across our faces. 4 generations in a way, Robert's memory, me, Daniel, and our children, broken and mended, like the Japanese art of kintsugi, where gold fills the cracks and makes the repaired piece more beautiful than the original. Can I tell you something? Ethan asked suddenly. About that day, when Dad made you leave? I tensed but nodded. I watched from my window. You sat at the bus stop for a long time. I wanted to run after you, bring you my allowance, but Mom said if I did, I'd be homeless too. His voice cracked. I'm sorry I was a coward. You were 9. I said firmly. A child. There's nothing to forgive. That's what my therapist says. But I still feel it. He looked at the candle. Grandpa, I promise to be braver now, to stand up for what's right. Grace reached over and patted his hand. You're brave now. You helped me with my math homework. That's very brave. We laughed. Even Daniel managed a small smile. The poison was drawing out slowly, replaced by something tentative but real. I kept something else, Daniel said, reaching into his pocket. He pulled out a small key. To your old house. Our old house. I couldn't make myself throw it away. The key sat on the table between us, tarnished and small. I picked it up, felt its familiar weight. It doesn't open anything anymore, he continued. New owners changed the locks, but I thought maybe you'd want it for your memory box. I thought about the wooden box upstairs, filled with new memories now. Grace's adoption papers, her first drawing, a pressed flower from our garden, photos of Sunday dinners, Ethan's honor roll certificate, Daniel's first pay stub from the warehouse. Thank you, I said, pocketing the key. It belongs with the rest of our story. The candle burned lower. Grace yawned enormously. Bedtime for small people, I announced. I'm not small, she protested. I'm 6.5. As I tucked her in, she whispered, I like our big family now, even if Sad Man is still learning to smile. He's trying, I said, kissing her forehead. That's what matters. Downstairs, Daniel and Ethan were washing dishes together, their movements synchronized. They'd developed their own rhythms in their new apartment, their own healing rituals. Same time next week? Daniel asked as they prepared to leave. Same time. At the door, he paused. Mom, that recording, I still listen to it every week like you asked, but now I also listen to this. He showed me his phone, a voice memo dated last week. Grace's voice rang out. Sad Man Daniel helped me build the best fort ever. He's learning to be happy. The end. She insisted I save it, he said. Evidence that people can change. After they left, I stood in my lavender garden under the stars. The plants were dormant now, preparing for winter. But come spring, they'd bloom again. Cycles of death and rebirth, of falling and rising. I thought about the woman I'd been 5 years ago, broken on a church cot with $50 in despair. She couldn't have imagined this. A home filled with children's laughter. Work that mattered. A son returning not for money but for connection. The key to my old life sat heavy in my pocket. Tomorrow I'd add it to the memory box, another artifact of who we'd been. But tonight, I just stood among the lavender, breathing in the ghost of summer blooms and the promise of spring. Grace was right. The best revenge was a life well lived, not because it punished those who'd hurt you, but because it proved that cruelty didn't have the final word. Love did. Forgiveness did. The choice to rise again and again, no matter how many times you were knocked down. I went inside, blew out the candle, and checked on Grace one more time. She slept peacefully, one hand flung above her head, the other clutching her stuffed rabbit. my second-chance daughter, who taught me that hearts could expand infinitely, that there was always room for more love, more hope, more healing. In the morning, we'd make pancakes. Ethan would come early to help. Daniel would drink coffee and practice smiling. We'd tend our garden, write our columns, do homework, ordinary life, made extraordinary by its very existence after so much loss. The wooden box on my shelf held our whole story now. The breaking and the mending, the falling and the rising, the cruelty and the grace. But the real story lived in our daily choices to show up, to try again, to believe that families could be rebuilt from the ashes of what they'd burned. 5 years ago, my son gave me $50 and called it freedom. He was right, though not in the way he'd meant. It was the price of discovering who I really was when everything else was stripped away, the cost of learning that some throwaways become treasures, that some endings become beginnings, that the sweetest revenge isn't revenge at all. It's the simple, radical act of refusing to let cruelty win. The candle smoke had cleared, but the scent of lavender lingered. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new chances to choose love over bitterness. But tonight, in my house full of second chances, all was well. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're tuning in from. Please share in the comments below so we can connect. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel and let me know your thoughts on Evelyn's journey. What would you have done in her place?